Good evening. Here we are with a Laughter Saves Lives live show, special show in memory of 9/11. We didn't feel appropriate doing one of our little goofy shows tonight. Benny kind of felt the same way. So we teamed up together, and I want to thank Benny
Thank you.
for agreeing to do a show with us.
Thank you, Benny.
Because we're going to play this for the same show twice, during Benny's hour and during the Laughter Saves Lives hour. So thank you, Benny.
Oh, thank you guys. This is a great,
Yeah,
great
it was a good idea.
thing
And
you're
it was
doing.
kind of Benny's idea. He said, what are you going to do? And I didn't even think about it. So what we're going to do tonight is we have one call-in guest and two in-studio guests. One of them is just a firefighter. He's going to talk about some of the guys that were lost from his station, his house, Chris Perry from Engine 230. We have Monica Icon calling in about 10 after the hour. She lost her husband on 9/11. He was with one of the brokerage firms. I don't remember which one. I'll let her tell you that, Michael. And she was very, very involved with the memorial and getting the memorial done down there. She's still on the board of directors. So she's going to talk a little bit about how it all got started, which I think is pretty interesting. Maybe she'll give us some of the inside stories of how it all got started and what they're doing now. You know, what changes are they making? What are they thinking about doing? I think that's pretty interesting. Frank is going to, and then we have Barbara Horn coming in from the Calling of the Names. Frank and I are going downtown on September 11th.
Yes.
I've done it the last 2 years, and I was honored to bring Frank with me this year.
Yes, and I was honored that my uniform still fit after
Yes.
all these years. I
Yes.
put it on, and all I needed was a little dry cleaning.
There you go. So the two of us are going to go down, and we're going to read some names. And from what I understand, they're giving me, last year I read Police Officer Michael McDonald. I don't know if you remember who Michael McDonald was. He was shot in Central Park years ago, paralyzed, and continued to speak out and bring people together. He actually went to the prison and forgave the kid who shot him. He was involved with a whole bunch of things, and even he was down there. I can't say he's on a pilot. He was in a wheelchair, but he was down there for moral support on 9/11. He passed away last year. I read his name and said a little bit about him. This year, forgive me, I think it's John Vigiano. He lost two sons on 9/11,
Yes.
a police officer and a firefighter. He passed away this year, and they have asked me to read his name and say a little bit about him. So it's going to be a very moving day, and I'm glad I have my buddy over here with me. We're also bringing our buddy from Connecticut, Jim Preston, down. He's been on a guest on the show, and he's going to read some names down there. So that should be pretty good. We wanted to read some of our own names here tonight. It's not going to be as solemn as it is down there. I want to talk a little bit about the people. I'm just going to start off with a few names that our viewers wrote in, which I think is pretty cool. Kerry Raw Booth, Kevin Smith. Now, Kevin Smith, firefighter Kevin Smith, did work with me in Hazmat 1. All right? She said he was my uncle. He left 7 children. I don't know if we had Josephine on the show. His daughter is the first female firefighter that got on the job whose dad was lost on 9/11. So that's Kevin Smith, left 7 children. He was one of the first firefighters in the towers, and he was part of the FDNY Counterterrorism Committee, who ironically had just had a meeting. Kevin's wife used to work for the city. She grabbed a jumpsuit and badge and worked the pile for 3 days nonstop, hoping to find her husband, Kevin. Ray Meisenheimer was also in Hazmat before I got there, firefighter, instructor for EFFD as a volunteer. I don't know, it's a volley department in Long Island.
East Farmingdale, probably.
Okay, East Farmingdale, and he left behind 2 daughters and a wife.
I don't know for sure if it was East Farmingdale.
Yeah, it's in Long Island. Jennifer McNamara, we've done shows for Johnny Mac Foundation.
Yes.
Okay, her husband died of 9/11 related injuries. He died in 2000 related. He had cancer in 2006, and he passed away on August 2009 of 9/11 related cancer. I didn't know John. I feel like I knew him because we've dealt so much with his wife Jennifer, with the Johnny Mac Foundation. He was an interesting guy. While he had cancer, they formed an organization that was fighting, as is John Field is, with John Field. The organization was called, I don't have the name in front of me, but as this man, just like Ray Pfeiffer was fighting for other firefighters who were getting sick as he was dying. So real heroes. Nancy Ness Rendecker remembers firefighter Richard T. Muldowney of Ladder 156 and firefighter Keith Young. Tara Young Salerno, our buddy
Yes.
John,
Yes,
retired.
John's wife, the retired NYPD John,
Retired.
and
They're
Tara,
in-
they're down in Texas.
Texas now. We say hello to them. They remember their cousin from Ladder 21, firefighter Gerald J. Duffy, who I worked with in Manhattan. I was in the same battalion. He was in 21. I knew him. You know, a conversation here or there, hello. I didn't know him well. I can only say that he really seemed to be into the job and a good firefighter. John F. Walsh, who's
Yes.
down there with Salerno.
Our buddy John.
Yep. He remembers firefighter Frankie Esposito. He was a good friend of the family. Diane Cancro, my sister-in-law, remembers firefighter Robert Hunter from 288, who I did work with. We said John McNamara. Nancy Newsom Frederick says she wants to remember the 37 PAPD officers, never to be forgotten. John Santo, where are you, buddy? I'm gonna read some of the. You know what I'll do? I'll read half of the PAPD, and then you could read the other half after the break. How's that sound?
Okay.
Officer John Lennon, Officer J.D. Levy, Officer James F. Lynch, Superintendent of Police Fred V. Marone. And please forgive me if I mispronounce the names. We didn't have time to phonetically sound these out, so I may spell a last name. Captain Kathy Mazza, Officer Walter A. McNeil, Officer Joseph M. Navis, Officer James Nelson. Oh, I missed that one. Officer Donald J. McIntyre, Officer Alphonse J. Niedermeyer, Officer James W. Parham, Officer Dominic A. Pizzulo. Slow down. Officer Bruce A. Reynolds, Officer Antonio J. Rodriguez, Officer Richard Rodriguez, Chief James A. Romatito. John, you want to shut that ringer off, please? Or take my phone out of here. Officer John P. Scala and Officer WALWYN W. Stewart, Officer Kenneth F. Tietjen, Officer Nathaniel Webb, Officer Michael T. Woolley, and Cyrus from the K-9 unit. I guess they lost a doggy down there. How about you give me a little break and talk about your guys there?
Sure. These were personal friends of mine and some of the guys I actually worked with. So when I remember their command, it's the command that I remember them from. So if it's not their command, I apologize, but it will always be to me. Firefighter Brian Sweeney, FDNY Squad 288. Brian and I were friends through the volunteer fire department. He was a great kid. My wife and I used to have a bar, and he used to come in on his days off and his shift and hang out. And he was always pleasant, always smiling. Sergeant Rodney Gillis, NYPD ESU. Rodney was one of my sergeants when I was a police officer in the 7-7, and one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. Cared very much for his cops, and he was he was a cop's cop. He was a great boss. Sergeant Mark Lawler, NYPD 7-7 precinct. Again, he was one of my sergeants when I was a cop, and I used to give him such a hard time. But he was a great guy. He gave it right back to me. And he was a Dolphins fan, so every time the Jets played the Dolphins, we would always have a little rivalry going. And so now every year when the Jets play the Dolphins, I always think of Mark.
Have one for him?
Absolutely, absolutely. Sergeant Chris Christodulo, NYPD Midtown South. Chris was just one of the most easygoing guys you could ever met. As a matter of fact, we didn't actually believe his name was Chris Christodulo. We thought they would just call him Chris because his last name was Christodulo. He said, no, my parents did that to me. So one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. He passed from 9/11 related illness. Sergeant Mark Lawler also died from the illness, and Rodney Gillis died that day in the tower collapse. New York Fire Patrolman Keith Roma. I didn't know Keith personally, but I have friends who were friends with him, and again, they say he was one of the nicest kids, very hardworking, and just a very nice person. And last but never least, New York Fire Patrolman Brian McCauley. Brian McCauley and I grew up together since kindergarten, and he had a very big impact on my life because most people don't believe this when I tell them. But growing up and through high school, I was very, very introverted and very shy, and I had a hard time talking to people and being around people. And Brian always encouraged me to hang around with him, and they would go out, and he always invited me out, and he got me out of my shell, and he got me able to, I credit him for being able to stand in front of a crowd and do comedy, and to sit here now and do this. Some people say, those that know me now, say that Brian created a monster, and that's great because then as long as I'm here, a little bit of Brian lives on. So, Brian, I never forgot you for what you did for me, and I appreciate everything. Thank you.
Nice job, Frank. John Santo.
Yes, sir.
Do me a favor. Is Monica text messaging on my phone?
I'll check.
Here. You know the phone number to call in, right?
Yeah.
I think I was supposed to text it to her, and I think I forgot to. She may be.
I don't know how you get into your phone, though.
Bring it out. Bring it out. Benny. I don't want you to sit here and
No.
do nothing. I feel bad. You want to read some of those names?
I want to read some names, and I'll tell. You had asked me before we started taping. You said what I did. Now you guys were on the job. You're working in the city. I'm a machinist, and I manufacture aircraft parts.
Oh wow!
That's what I do for a living, and
I never knew that.
I start very early in the morning. So I started at this particular job at 6:30 a.m. So when everything started happening, it was around 8:30 or so. So I first heard about it, and I thought at first it might have been an accident because many years ago there was a plane that crashed into the Empire State Building.
Yes,
In the 30s,
And my
I believe
that was in like the
right,
30s,
in the
right?
30s, and my father and my uncle, they were twin brothers. They worked in, they used to deliver ice and stuff in the city. So they knew some of the people from the Empire State Building. They actually knew the kid that was flying home. They knew his mom. The kid was flying home
How
from
big
the
was
service.
that plane? How many passengers?
It wasn't. You could see the plane. I heard for a long time you could see the plane inside of it. So right away I just shrugged it off at first.
Me too.
Yeah, I thought
too.
We all did,
I
yeah.
thought it was an accident. A plane. And then the second one hit, and then we went into the office and we had TVs, and we saw what happened, and I was very devastated by it. And then, so what happened here in the city, we lost our towers, we lost a lot of great people, hardworking, good people. I feel that what I want to read is there are a lot of us forget an airplane was stopped. An airplane was. They believe it was going to target the White House,
Right.
either the White House or the Capitol. Flight 93
In Pennsylvania.
in Pennsylvania,
Yep.
crashed in Pennsylvania, and there are many stories about how they were heroic. That I believe the crew already were killed, and the passengers fought and stopped this plane from going into Washington.
Right.
So I would like to read, and I'll make it quick. I'd like to read the crew and passengers of Flight 93.
I tell you what,
And
Benny, read maybe half, and then you can take a breath.
And I'll take a
then
breath.
and then you read the rest.
Later on.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to read the crew first.
Go for it.
The crew is Jason Dahl, Lorraine Bay, C.C. Lyles, Wanda Green, Leroy Homer Jr., Sandra Bradshaw, Deborah Ann Jacobs Welch. Now I'll read a few of the passengers.
Sure.
Christian Adams, Todd Beamer.
He's the famous one
He's
from the movie,
Yes.
right? Let's Roll.
Let's
Was it
Roll.
Let's
Oh,
Roll?
he's Todd Beamer
Yes,
is
yes.
Let's Roll.
Let's
He was
Roll.
the one that Alan Bevan, Mark Bingham, Deborah Bodley, Marion Britton, Thomas E. Burnett Jr., and William Cashman. And I'll read the rest
Read a few
later
more.
on.
Yeah,
Read a few more? Oh, okay. Georgine Rose Corrigan, Patricia Cushing, Joseph DeLuca, Patrick Joe Driscoll, Edward Porter Felt, Jane Folger, Colleen L. Frazier, Andrew Garcia, Jeremy Glick, Lorraine Colas, Donald F. Green, Linda Gronlund, Richard Guadagno, Tashia Kuj, Hilda Marcin, Waleska Martinez, Nicole Miller, Louis J. Nacky II, Donald and Jean Peterson, Mark Mickey Rothenberg, Christine Snyder, John Talgagnani, Honor Elizabeth Wania, and Kristen Gould W. And
all of
that's
them.
all of them.
Oh, wow.
That's all. Yeah, you thought.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
And I also, I wish to remember them. And God bless all, everyone. You'll always be remembered.
Chris, you want to come out here?
Yeah, I'll
Come
leave.
on out. No, you can stay if you want.
No, I'll walk out and he could come and sit right there.
Before you leave, I was just saying, Betty, that we did a show in the city. I don't know how short after 9/11 it was. We were doing a benefit, and there was a flight attendant in the audience, and she came up to me, and we were selling shirts at the time. It had NYPD, FDNY, PAPD on it, and she said, "Boy," she says, "I really enjoyed the show, and you're doing really good work." She says, she goes, "I have to say that nobody ever mentions the flight attendants. We were like the first responders on the flight." Move over a little bit. We were the first responders, really. The first responders were the flight attendants. And I looked at her and I said, "You know what? I'm a little embarrassed." I said, "You're correct." So it would be nice at one point to do. The thing with that is you do a fundraiser for the spread out all over the country. It's not like you're going to be able to attract an audience. Yes, you want to say something.
The first intelligence that came in was from the flight. I think her name was Leanne Sweeney. Was on the flight 11.
Are you mic on?
I'm mic'd on.
Okay.
The first plane to hit the World Trade Center, and she was giving them real-time intel, and then they also had the air traffic control tape when the one terrorist said, "We have some planes."
Yes.
And they replayed it, and they said plural planes, and she was giving them intelligence, and then that was relayed to the FAA and to the military.
Was it true that it was that guy's first day on the job, that air traffic controller supervisor?
That I don't.
In the movie, they had a movie about it, and they said it was just like his first day on the job.
That I don't know, but I know that General Jumper, who I met when I was at Aviation Week, he was the head of Air Combat Command. He took office today, 9/6/2001.
Okay.
Was when he became the head of the air defense for the United States.
Maybe that's the guy I'm talking about.
That was true. I don't know about the air traffic controllers.
Maybe
they had
that's the guy I'm talking
experience,
about.
yeah.
Is Barbara here yet? Do you know if Barbara's here?
I sent
All right.
Pat out to
All right. So before I introduce you want to?
Yeah, I'll leave. So Chris can sit
Why don't
right
you
here.
switch seats? I don't want you to leave, Benny. It's your show.
Yeah.
It's your show. People are going to come on your show. Go ask Benny. Stay. We're all in there.
All right.
Say Benny got younger and better.
Okay.
looking.
Oh, yeah.
Before I speak to Chris, I'm just going to read the names of the guys from my house. Around the country, they call them stations. I think New York is the only place we call them house.
It's a house.
Am I right?
Yeah, you spend 1/3 of your life there for 20 plus years.
Might as well be a house, right?
Lieutenant Ronnie Kerwin. Did you mention Ronnie?
No.
Okay.
Not that Ronnie.
Ronald Kerwin, Ronnie Kerwin. I called him lieutenant. He was in the squad. All I can say about him is I wasn't too close with the guys in the company across the floor, but hell of a lieutenant. He seemed like he was really into the job, and those guys drilled all the time. Train. Adam Rand, you didn't mention him. He's from Belmore. Adam came to me before 9/11 and asked if I wanted to do a comedy show at the Belmore Firehouse, and then it burnt down. I don't know if you remember that.
All right.
So we never did it, but Adam seemed like a really nice guy. Firefighter Timothy Welty, another firefighter. John Ielpi, his dad was very, very involved with everything that went on after 9/11. His dad was down there digging for a while. Joseph Hunter, we mentioned. Firefighter Ronnie Geese. That's our phone call. That's our guest call.
I knew Ronnie. Ronnie was a great guy.
Yes.
I also knew him through the volunteer fire department, and he was a great guy. I know his sons. They're on the job too. But
Monica, is that you? Monica? That may be our guest calling in.
Yes.
Monica. Is that you?
Yes, it's me. It's a little noisy. I'm outside because, it's raining.
All right. Give me just 30 seconds, and then we'll get you right on, and we'll get you. I know you have to go.
No, it's fine.
You good?
fine.
All right. firefighter Ronnie Geese, firefighter Peter Brennan, who I every morning used to watch cartoons, and what was that show that he used to watch? It was some wacky show. Brian Sweeney, you had mentioned.
Brian Sweeney, yes.
And then I'll just mention the guys from Hazmat, and we'll bring Monica on, and then Chris
good.
after. Chief Jack Fanning, Chief of Hazmat Ops, was driving himself that day, and responded. He was not in our station, in our house, but we included him in everything. He responded at the fire academy. There were two captains. We didn't have really a captain in Hazmat. There were two captains vying for the spot. They were both lost on 9/11. Firefighter Captain Patrick J. Waters was at the medical office where I should have been with him, and on duty was Captain Thomas Moody. Lieutenant John Krishy was going to retire in a few months. He's another one that jumped back on the truck. And you don't hear a lot about that. Firefighters get off of duty. It's officially 9. Most of them get relieved at 8. And a lot of the guys were having a cup of coffee, taking their time, changing at the locker, and jump back on the truck when this disaster came in, because that's what a firefighter and a cop does. And a lot of them were lost that weren't even really working. Firefighter Kevin Smith, whose daughter I mentioned was the first female firefighter whose dad died on 9/11. My 24 partner, firefighter John Giordano, real gentleman, guitar player. Are you talking to me?
I'm talking to.
My best friend, firefighter Tom Gardner, on the job. Tommy was the one that I used to do the radio show with, my first radio show, and he was lost. Martin DeMeo, big Met fan, Marty. Firefighter John Holman. Quick story about John. He fixed trucks at the big trucking place in Brooklyn there, Roadway. He's a big mechanic, great with cars. Before 9/11, every time it rained, my car would not start. Whatever that is, I'm not good with cars. John fixed it. The first time it rained after 9/11, I had forgotten that he fixed the car. And I said, holy crap, he's turned it on. And I go, thank you, John. Firefighter Dennis Carey, smart, a funny guy from Wantor. He gave me the joke that I used on The View. I don't know if you remember, it was 2001 January. I think the Giants just lost, was it the Super Bowl or the playoffs? The New York Giants, 2001.
Super Bowl.
Was it the Super Bowl? And I did a joke about the people, now I couldn't do this after 9/11, but the people hanging out of the windows in the building, and I'm talking to them. And the one guy's hanging out the window, and I said, hey, hold on. And Dennis goes, no, ask him if he's a Giant fan. And I said, are you a Giant fan? They said, yeah. He goes, jump, right? It was a few, and it got such a big laugh, and Dennis wrote that joke for me. And firefighter Dennis Scalzo, I'm still very close with his wife, his daughters. They're a wonderful family. They're a big supporter of Laughter Saves Lives. They've come to tons of shows. They wrote me tonight, and they thanked me for mentioning Dennis's name. So we have on the air Monica Icon from September's Missions. Hello, Monica.
No?
Can you hear me, Monica?
Yes, I hear you. How are you?
Good, darling.
Welcome.
Welcome. Can
Thank
you
you.
tell us,
Thank you.
can you give us a little background about your husband and how you got involved down at the memorial down there?
Yes. Unfortunately, on 9/11, I lost my beloved soulmate, Michael Patrick Eichen, who worked at Euroburgers on the 84th floor. We were newly married, 11 months. We actually met on 9/11 in 1999.
Oh, wow.
And when that happened, I just assumed his best friend got out. He got out as well. And when I realized he didn't get out and he would be a missing person, we searched for him, as most did. And when I realized he may never come home, but not having any remains to this day, I decided about 10 days after the events that I needed to work on preserving the site and where they last were, and making sure that we don't build over dead people pretty much became the soundbite, I guess you would say. And that began September's mission. And 17 years later, we're proud to say that we accomplished the mission and have a beautiful memorial, world-class memorial museum that we didn't expect to have, because originally they said, no, that would never happen. And they said, you can have a monument in between prime real estate, but here we are. 16 acres became 8 acres of a world-class memorial museum dedicated to our loved ones, and it's the best thing I could have accomplished in my life since I don't have him, and I can go there anytime I want to now. And I'm actually a proud family board member of the National September 11th Memorial Museum since fruition in 2004, but I'm still active at September's mission 17 years later, and I have 2 beautiful girls now, married to a fireman as well. Ironically, my husband wasn't a fireman. He worked on the 84th floor at Eurobrokers. So losing him, I've dedicated pretty much most of my life to him and continue to do so in honoring his legacy in the work that I do today. I have Eichen Preschool in honor of his name, which former Mayor Michael Bloomberg cut the ribbon for on his birthday on 9/8. 4 years ago. So the good news is we get to celebrate his life on 9/8 this Saturday. He would have been 54. We go to the memorial and bring a bunch of friends, loved ones, and we bring his favorite thing, Merlot, to drink. And we're very proud to say that we continue his legacy by doing the good works that we do and honoring all those we lost that horrific day. And that sustains me and allows me to be who I am and be with my 2 beautiful girls and my new husband and, continue my life. We don't move on, but we continue in the life we were given because we didn't choose it. So everything I do is dedicated to him and honoring everyone who has continued to die and suffer from 9/11 related illnesses and first responders and volunteers. We do as much as we can to continue to do that work. And making sure that we never forget those that we have lost and continue to lose. And that's why we are doing this work and continue to do that work,
Well,
as you know, John.
I've known Monica. I think I met you maybe a year after 9/11. Was it that around there?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
2002.
and we kind of lost touch.
I was very active in 10 days after, so I
Yeah.
started very quickly.
Yeah, so-
And not knowing what I was doing exactly, I can say, but very happy that when you have a mission and you stay the course and you understand what you're doing and know what you're doing and why you're doing it, I think that positive things come out of things when you stay the course.
Yep.
And I think that a lot of the family members, we all band together to create the sustainable memorial we have today in this beautiful museum and world-class memorial museum that millions and millions have gone, over 60 million.
Yeah.
I think that's a testament to doing good work and making sure you never forget and how we continue to honor our loved ones, especially since I don't have them. I'm one of the 4% that have no remains, but I'm confident he is in the museum. There's 8,000 of them remains there.
How
I
many?
feel
How
that he
many?
is there.
Monica?
So
How
for
many?
me,
How many
that
were
is
not
my home.
identified? What's
Yeah.
What's the number that was not identified? Do you know?
8,000.
8,000
there's
were
like
not.
8,000 remains in the museum. There's a quarter of us who have not been identified.
Oh, okay.
So out
okay.
of it's about a quarter. And we just had an identification recently, Scott Michael. So that's
Yes,
who's,
I saw
above,
that.
He was above Eurobrokers, so that gives me hope that Michael may
Well, we
be
hope
found
so.
at some point. And even if he was, I would still keep him in the museum because that was where he took his last breath, his last step, and I feel that's the place that I call home for him.
Right.
So that's the place I connect with him. So I think, even if they found him, I'm optimistic, but I would still go to that place to
All right.
honor him
I see that. Well,
and
listen,
keep him there.
Monica. First of all,
Yeah.
you said that you started this organization. We're going to have to go in a few seconds, but you started the organization and you basically tripped through things. You had a learning curve. I'm lucky enough to have you and people like you, friends of firefighters, who I can call on when I don't know what the hell I'm doing with Laughter Saves Lives Foundation, and you're always there for me. You'll always answer questions. You'll meet with me. You've supported us financially a bit with the show at the Veterans Hospital. So I just want to say from Laughter Saves Lives Foundation, we thank September's Missions and Monica for what you've done for us.
Well, we thank you for what you do. So you
Thank-
bring laughter into our lives in a place that it was very dark and sad, and it's nice to be able to do that. So,
And that's
we
what-
will
that's what-
continue to help you. You know how we roll.
Yeah,
so
that's
we
what-
will make sure. We have to get to the veterans thing. That's very important. That I
We'll get
really
you back.
enjoyed
We'll
that
get you. I won't let you get
experience,
away
and
with it. Don't worry.
I need to do that again. So we will do that.
All right.
And continue to keep laughing. as
Thank
we
you,
say.
Monica. We gotta let you go, but I thank you for taking the time. I know you gotta go to that meeting. So
Yes,
I will
yes.
see you soon.
Tribute in life. Yes. Thank you so much.
Yes. Yeah, Bob. Let's run
Bye,
the Life
John.
Hack commercial. Wait, before you run the Life Hack, I'm sorry. Before you run the Life Hack, 1 second. Let's just let Chris read his names. Then we'll do Life Hack, and then we'll bring Barbara out.
Great.
Chris. Last name is Perry
wanna
from
sit
Engine
over here?
230.
Stay, Ben.
Chris, you wanted to just mention the guys that were lost in your house and
Yeah,
talk a little bit about them.
Well, first off, thank you for having me. I'm glad I
Pleasure.
saw Benny while I was out cutting my lawn, and he happened to drive by and say, hey, why don't you come down? We're doing a special. And I appreciate what you're doing, and you're there, so you know the routine. You as well, you know it. I was a member in Engine 230 in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Some guys will say Williamsburg. I'll still say Bed-Stuy.
Okay.
Also in the 5-7 Battalion, which a lot of people don't realize, the Brooklyn Battalion 5-7 was decimated that day. Every company, with the exception of one, lost a ton of guys. So, and Monica just reminded me now, there was a lot of empty caskets, a lot of remains.
Yes.
You know the deal.
Yes.
So we keep all of those thoughts in their family in our prayer. Being a member of Engine 230, we lost 6 that day. Unfortunately, as Monica also stated, we're losing members. We're now up to 8. We're a single engine company. You're talking 18 guys. You lose 8, that's a big
Absolutely.
chunk of your company.
Absolutely.
On that day, we lost Lieutenant Brian Ahern. Brian was brand new to our company. He was covering, as they like to say, UFO until further ordered. And we were really pushing for Brian to be there and stay there. Just a class act. He came out of the Bronx. He loved the Brooklyn thing. We're a little worried about him, but a beautiful family. His kids now, they're adults now. They were
Sure.
babies then. And just a great guy, and we were really pushing for Brian to stay with us. Then we lost Frankie Bonomo. Frank was the very first guy I ever met when I walked in the firehouse as a probie. I'll let you say he broke me in right.
Right.
And he taught me, he gave me some vices. Hey, I know a guy, you like the golf, you like the spreadsheets? And that was Frankie. Frankie Bonomo was always around. And another one, young children, beautiful wife, and never found him either. Then we have Michael Carlo. He was our resident, he was our stud. He was that guy that every party there was a new girl. He would take 6 months off to go sail the world. And they do have a Mike Carlo Foundation. His brother Rob was on the job. They do motorcycle runs and all sorts of stuff. So it's another great foundation. Great guy. We lost. Everybody was jealous of Mike in his life. Then we had Ted. His name was Edward, but he wanted to be called Ted.
Okay.
Ed White. Another young, great guy, fairly new to the firehouse, maybe a year and a half. Quiet. And that's what scared us, the quiet
Yeah,
ones.
yeah.
But what a fireman. But when he did speak, everybody shut up. It was amazing. Like, this guy's got 1 year, but he was great. Another one, young wife, young child. It's just terrible. And I believe the daughter's actually in college now. It's like crazy.
Well, my daughter was 1. She just started
It's
college.
amazing, isn't it?
the
It's
other
like,
day, yeah.
wow. They're learning about all of this.
Yeah,
It's
in
history.
school and history class.
Exactly. Then we had Jeff Stark, whose family was on the job. His brother was actually the captain of 75 and 33 in the Bronx, the Animal House. Jeff, this kid, he looked like the Joker. His teeth just went this way, and he was just happy to be on the job. Young guy willing to learn. He was going places. We knew. I said, oh, this kid's going to be a chief. He is going to be golden. Then we had,
That's okay.
Gene Whalen, my 24 partner.
Okay.
I was getting married, and little quick story here. I was in the process of getting married, and you got to pay for the wedding, and you need certain dates off. And I was square rooting. Square rooting means messing around with the charts for those people who don't know. And I was square rooting Gene into working here, working there, working here, working there. 9/11 happened on a Tuesday. I said, Gene, I really got to go pay for my wedding on Monday night. Can you? Gene worked the Monday night, the Tuesday day in my group. I lost Gene. I thank him every day,
Yep.
because that's what I got. I got my son. And that could have been me. So, Gene, my hero.
That's what I do all the time. Is
Yeah.
when I have my daughter just started college. My son got married, any event like that in my life, I stop back and I go, they're never going to experience any of this.
No.
And we have to live,
Yeah.
you know, and do the right thing and do some good work because we're here.
Yep,
And
that's
we very
why
easily
I
couldn't
keep
have been.
pushing on, you know. And
Yeah.
I say, Gene did this for me. We were in Proby school together. We were in the same squad
Oh,
together.
wow.
We went to the same firehouse together, and he was just young guy, full of life, Irish family from the Rockaways. They were
Yeah.
the greatest, and we had a really good time. And my big thing right now is, and I go on, you know, everybody's social medias, and now I'm retired, so I could open up my mind a little more.
Right.
We just lost 2 in the last 2 years. That firemen are still dying, police officers are still dying, rescue workers are still dying.
Absolutely.
About 2 years ago, we lost John Dunn to 9/11 related illnesses, and he was living down in Florida at the time. He was out of the job, and I just want to thank the volunteers because they stepped up and gave him a world-class fireman's funeral, North Lindenhurst and Lindenhurst Fire Departments
Nice.
and all
Yep,
that.
they stepped
And he
up
wasn't
a
a
lot.
volley. They
Yeah.
just stepped up and did it for us, along with the FDNY.
Yeah.
And then just 2 weeks ago, I don't know if you saw it in the newspapers, Jimmy Martinez from Staten Island.
And that's a
9/11.
shame. There's so many of them.
They're dying and nobody
we
knows.
miss it.
Right.
We miss the.
Yeah.
I don't mean to rush.
No,
you.
go.
We thank you for coming on. 'Cause
Thank
we
you.
We dragged
I
Barbara out from
appreciate it.
Long Beach.
Thank you
very
for
much.
having me. I
Thank you
appreciate
for
it. Benny,
sharing.
next time, come and cut my lawn
Yeah,
instead
go
of.
ahead.
Yeah.
Come on already.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate
right.
what you're doing.
Thanks, Chris. Let's run the life hack and bring Barbara out here.
When someone is choking, brain damage can occur after just 4 minutes. Did you know every 5 days a child dies because of a choking accident?
My name is Art Lee. I invented LifeVac to protect my family. LifeVac is an easy-to-use suction device with a special one-way valve to help save a choking victim.
I care for my dad, who's prone to choking. Having LifeVac in my home gives me peace of mind.
Protect your family. Buy LifeVac now.
Thank you, Dad.
Call 1-877-LifeVac or visit lifevac.net.
All right, Barbara. So. Hey, we're back.
We're back.
All right, I'm sorry. Laughter Saves Lives Live special 9/11 special memorial show. We just brought on Barbara Horn. Can we say from the Calling of the Names?
Yes.
Is that what it's called, Barbara? The Calling of the Names?
Yes.
What do they call the official name calling down at the site? Do they call that the Calling of the Names? Is there a name?
No. They call it the official ceremony.
They call it the official ceremony.
Yeah, and they talk about reading the name.
All right. So, well, Barbara's here, and I've known Barbara for a few years now, and there's only one person that I think is a little more wackier than I am.
Oh,
And I
thank
think
you.
in a good way.
What a
in a good
wonderful
way. It's always
compliment.
nice to call a lady
Right.
a wacky job, but she's wonderful,
James-
and she's sensitive, and she does a lot of good work. Tell us about the Calling of the Names. Tell us about that site after 9/11, that church. If somebody's watching that doesn't know what went on there.
Oh, can they see
if
us
they
too?
can
We
see
can
it.
be seen.
Yes, we
Oh,
can see.
okay.
So tell us a little bit about what went on down there and how did it get started?
Okay. So, St. Paul's Chapel, which is the oldest public building in continuous. Do I look somewhere? Am I
Right there.
looking?
Um,
Straight ahead.
You can look
Okay.
right there.
Okay, so St. Paul's Chapel is the oldest public building in continuous use in Manhattan. It was founded in 1766, before the country even started.
Wasn't one of the presidents did something there?
You're about to find out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Very good. No,
Sorry.
John. When George Washington was sworn in, I learned things because I didn't realize New York for a short while in the beginning was the first capital
That's
of
right.
the United States.
Right? John would
And-
know that. He knows all this
Yes.
stuff.
And because of that, guess who was sworn in? George Washington at Federal Hall right on Wall Street. And because they've been a fire at Trinity Church, which is the parent church to St. Paul, instead of going right there, Trinity's that big church that faces Wall Street.
Okay.
Yes.
They bypassed it because it was damaged from a fire, and they headed up the street about 4 or 5 blocks to St. Paul's Chapel.
Interesting.
So for a year or two, however long New York was the capital, George Washington, there was a pew, his seals hanging there, and that day, I guess they called it the inaugural sermon. Language was a little different. So I do remember, and it's amazing because the chapel is at the northeast corner of the World Trade Center, a 16-acre complex. So everybody thought pretty much that it was gone.
Sure.
But not even a window pane was cracked. So there were a lot of, it's often called the little church that stood.
And how about the firehouse right across the street there too?
1010.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's up with that? I know, it's pretty wild
Yeah.
what happened in that immediate area. So because of that, people started gathering there, and eventually someone said, "You mind if I go in and just rest on the pew?" And I think one thing led to another, and pretty soon it's what I still call, it became a full-service house of worship. So
Food, right?
food,
Drink.
massage, chiropractors. Interestingly enough, the foot doctors, the podiatrists were in George Washington's pew. The volunteer shift, they had 2 12-hour shifts if you were a volunteer at St. Paul's Chapel, and there were thousands of them.
And when
that
did you
came.
start though down there?
I came there Christmas Eve. I'll tell you, can I tell you a funny story?
Sure.
So I was waiting. In general, the chapel is open to the public, but during the rescue and recovery effort, it was closed to and just for responders and
Right.
recovery workers and volunteers. So you had to check in at the front door. So I was there with one other gal, and there were a whole group of people in front of us. And so someone said, "Is there somebody who's the head of this group, because it's this big volunteer group?" And she says, "Yes, I'm Mary Ellen. We're the Jews from Staten Island, Temple Emmanuel. Tell all your people to go home, have their holiday." It was such a New York accent. "We're here, the Jews are here, and everything's going to be okay." So it was really
That's
something.
nice.
So I think we were the only 2 Christians there that night. Because the temple, they realized it was a holy, it was
That was
Christmas
really
Eve.
nice, Right,
yeah. that was nice.
But it was kind of funny. My friend was from Milwaukee, and she's going, "People really talk like this?" I
Yeah.
said, "Yes, they do." So that was my first night there.
That's nice. So now tell us what it morphed into here now. How did this calling of the name start?
So I'll tell you, about 3 years ago, well, many of us go to the official ceremony or witness it, and at some point, and then John Field has the wonderful Responders Remembered Park, which is a memorial park out in Suffolk County that has the names of all 9/11 responders and volunteers who died of 9 related illness.
Illness,
And
correct.
he does something there once a year.
Oh, we're losing you, both.
Cozy up to John.
Cozy up.
Oh
Cozy
yeah,
up.
you're off the.
Losing you.
Okay,
Yeah.
am I
Can
back
we make
on?
that
This, by the
picture?
way, is.
All right,
this
you're
is-
good. You're
This is
good.
Riley. He's a rescue boy from Brooklyn, and he'll come on some
Riley's
other
fine.
night. He'll come
Riley's
on some
fine.
other night and talk to you.
I think Riley's up against your mic.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He wants to talk. See what I tell you. So at some point. Through the years, you listen to people's names being called as a way of remembering down at the site. And at some point, the list of names got to be so much. And so 2 years ago in 2016, myself and another volunteer said, maybe we could call the names of all those who died since, those who came in the days, the weeks, and the months after. Perhaps one way to honor them, to remember them, is to call their names. And I say that it's to honor, remember them, and the other thing, which it's in here, there's a little description about our mission, but the other thing that we really want to do, and it became clear to us the last month of the rescue and recovery effort, more and more families started coming with their loved ones. Spouses came, kids came, and over again we said, there's no way any of those responders, volunteers could have been there without the love and support of their families.
That's right.
So the first thing is we're remembering them, we're kind of, for a moment in time, calling out to them, and we're letting their families know, and all their friends and all the people who cared about them, that we appreciate what they did. And we appreciate what the families did because they're really part of it too.
And we appreciate what you do to put, because I know how crazy this gets, because it's not a complete list only because you're looking for people to give you names. Now you call a few different organizations to get some of the names, correct?
Our base list comes through the generosity of John Field and the Feel Good Foundation. A couple of years ago, we got their base list.
But that's just responders he has.
Well, what
not volunteers.
John has, no, I think he made like.
Oh, he
has
does?
a-
Yeah, John-
if-
John-
Yeah,
Oh, I
he's got
thought it was
everybody.
just responders.
No, I know there's
John
a,
recognizes
All right, I'm
everybody.
sorry.
there's a podiatrist on that list, a
Okay, I
chiropractor.
apologize.
The thing about John's list, which is important for that park, is everyone on that wall died of a 9/11 related illness.
Right.
For our
right.
purposes, it does not matter why someone died. So, for example, sometime in the past year, there were a group of National Guardsmen from New York that were over in Iraq, and their helicopter crashed, and they all
Correct.
died. And when you read their OBA, one of them, I believe, was an FDNY
Yes.
who had responded to 9/11.
Oh, I didn't know
so
that.
he didn't live long enough to die. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to be facetious. So we decided that for our purposes, it doesn't matter. And I'll say one thing. Last year, there was sometimes most of the people who call names, that's a whole nother topic actually, who who it is that calls names. So we have some family members. Most family members don't come because they're elsewhere. We just want them to know that we're doing this.
Right, that's nice.
We want to get them the program, the pin. We have a pin each year.
Can
But
they see it online anywhere?
we have
Yes.
a website called www.callingofthenames.
I did not realize you had the recordings because I went on there yesterday and I went through. I said, let me see if I could find me reading the names.
Oh, did
Because
you?
I've never seen it. I've never seen what I look like up there, and
Now you
I don't
saw.
think you're going to use me this year after I see what I look like up there.
Oh, well, we are also in the process of updating the website. It needs to be polished a little more, but it's a very good beginning. And people, if anyone has a name of someone who was a construction worker, an operating engineer,
Anybody that was involved.
some of the dog handlers. I counted the department. I have to say this: the Department of Sanitation of New York, I consider the unsung heroes of
Yes.
9/11. I
Very
didn't
good.
know this, but what I learned is firefighters, cops, and sanitation, they all have badges and they can all give tickets. So they're all together in that way.
That's right.
However, the sanitation workers were not trained to deal with death and and body parts. And when 9/11 happened, that crew, by the way, remained the same for the full 9 months. They didn't rotate. So you had the same group of people, and they cleared the streets. They did a lot of removing of human remains.
Do you know
and a
how
lot
many
of
of
that.
them, Barbara, have
We now
passed
have
away?
22
22 sanitation workers.
and I think there were only 120 who were in that crew. I'm not quite sure.
Because you said
I
they were
have to
down there
check
for
that.
how long? A year?
For pretty much the 9 months.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Wow.
So I remember saying to Chief Paul Stokes, he's retired now, but I went to him and I said, you know, you're the unsung heroes. I wish people knew more about what you did. And I
Right.
remember, he was eating a sandwich because you could eat in the chapel.
Right.
We had dessert. We had the best. I will tell you, this is true. Police officers always know when the food's out. They were always, no matter what happened, somebody called and said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to be late. The cops were always the first ones at the food table.
See?
But yes,
That's
I
right.
will confirm
5
that,
minutes before.
that stereotype. But what was I saying? I lost that thought.
That's okay. We all lose our thoughts.
Yes.
You want to
We're talking
regroup?
about the sanitation.
So I said to Chief Paul Stokes, you know, I really wish the sanitation would get more credit. You know, I'm glad everybody else is getting credit because they need the visibility. But, you know, sanitation, you're the unsung hero. So he looked at me, he took a bite of his sandwich, and he said, that's okay, Barbara. Garbage is a hard thing to sell.
And how many was 22 of 102?
So right now we have 22 sanitation workers.
And how many names do you have this year to read at this moment so far?
To call altogether?
Call on
just under
Tuesday.
900. And we
Just-
know that it's not a complete list.
Right.
But again, I want to emphasize over and over and over and over and over again that, and this is the other story I want to tell you, most of our names are people who died of 9/11 related illness, but that's not a requirement.
Right.
We found out after the fact, but last year a widow did call her husband's name. I won't say which branch she was in. He had committed suicide about 3 years ago, but PTSD, it was, anyway, it wasn't ruled 9/11 related, but his whole family knew that that was a strong part of what.
Right.
So she said afterwards to someone else, she said, you know, when I got up and called his name, she said, I forgot about the pain and I could call his name proudly because he came and served. So I called his name as someone who came and served. So there's healing sometimes that goes on with these things that you don't even know.
Absolutely.
So,
Barb, I'm just going to
yes.
ask you to, 1 second.
Yes.
John, read the rest of the PAPD.
Yep. So I just want to read, the first name is Lee Failing, who I knew in the Montauk Fire Department.
Yes.
Who was he helped me with my EMT training. He was an advanced EMT. He was in Engine 235. He was a NYPD cop, and then he became a firefighter, and he was on Engine 235. And ironically, when he was showing me how to fly the ladder truck from Montauk Fire Department's parking lot, you could see the World Trade Center. And he pointed out to me, he's like, look at the view up here, you could see the World Trade Center. And this had to be early 90s when I first joined.
Right.
And then ironically, you know, all those years later. So the Port Authority Police Department, Officer Christopher C. Amoroso, Officer Maurice V. Barry, Officer Liam Callahan, Lieutenant Robert D. Seary, Officer Clinton Davis, Officer Donald A. Foreman, Officer Greg J. Froner, Officer Thomas E. Gorman, Officer Uhuru G. Houston, and Officer George G. Howard. Now, a lot of volunteer firefighters will know George Howard. He was a Port Authority police officer. He was also the person that taught the mass confidence course at the Nassau Fire Academy.
Okay.
So that's how I met him, and he He said, "Are you guys smart guys? And what are you doing in the room with a psycho with a thing full of oil and a torch?" And he would light it up. And he taught us that your nose has to be on the floor, not just on your knees. Your nose has to be on the floor in order to really. Then I could breathe. I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's so much better down here." And that was the course that helped you get out. His mother gave President Bush the badge, and that was the famous badge that George Bush held up in the State of the Union address. Ironically,
right. Yes.
his badge number is 1012, and we know that 1013 is officer needs assistance.
Wow.
So it was only one number away from that number, which I thought was interesting. Officer Stephen Huxco, I apologize if I mispronounced that, Huczko, Inspector Anthony P. Infante Jr., Officer Paul W. Jurgens, Sergeant Robert M. Colfers, Officer Paul Lazinski, and Officer David P. Lamont. And if I could just tell a quick story about the lights behind us on the 6-month anniversary, I hate to say anniversary, but 6 months to the day after 9/11, it was March 11th, 2002. I had to go to Washington on a business trip. And there were 3 New York City firefighters on the flight. And I'm like, why would 3 New York City firemen in uniform be going to Washington? They were the 3 firefighters that raised the flag over Ground Zero, and their stamp was being unveiled in the Oval Office for the post office.
Wow.
They were also on the flight just by chance, because they're every hourly, it's an hourly flight back to New York. Just by chance, they were on my flight home. It was a 7 o'clock shuttle. As we approached New York, this was the first night that these were lit. And the flight, everybody was chatty, and everybody was. The captain made an announcement. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, look off to your left," and you could hear a pin drop on the plane. It was just the engines. Everybody was quiet because it was the first night. And we were coming in from the south, so off to the left you could see the beams in the distance, and then we went into the water. It was like it was moving, like everybody was in tears. It was a very moving experience.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I'm going to read just 2 more names, then we'll get back to Barbara. Kevin Pfeiffer went to elementary school with me. Kevin's brother was Joe Pfeiffer. Joe Pfeiffer was the chief in charge, the first chief in charge in the lobby.
Is that the picture you shared this week?
Yes,
Okay.
there was.
I
Well,
knew the name was small.
there's a famous video of the videographers
The
from
French
France.
brothers.
The
from
French
brothers.
right.
The French brothers.
I think Antonio Benetatis was in that picture. He ultimately came to hazmat. And you see the planes go down and hit the building, and Joe gets on the radio and calls it in, and he flies down there. Joe was one of the chiefs in charge, and one of the first companies, I shouldn't say one of the first companies, one of the companies that responded into the lobby was led by his brother, Lieutenant Kevin.
Right, these are
Pfeiffer.
the brothers. Yes.
And he sent Kevin up the towers, whatever floor he sent him to, and Kevin was lost that day. So it's one of those stories that are really powerful. My parents grew up in Middle Village with his parents. His dad was never the same after 9/11. They came actually to one of the comedy shows we did there. They dragged the parents out. The mother, she had a nice time. She thanked me because we did it in memory of Kevin. It's the one we're doing at St. Margaret's coming up. We did it in memory of Kevin one year, and the parents came and they thanked me for doing it, but the dad was never the same. And I think that's what a lot of people forget. The guys that were lost on 9/11 and their families went through hell, and they really did. The cops and firemen that had to go to work the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that, it took a toll on us. It really did. Listen, I'm not complaining. We did what we were supposed to do, but it definitely affected me for a long time, probably until this day. There are a lot. We had one guy commit suicide after 9/11, a year after 9/11. We can't forget those guys either. It's our job. But think about it. You're at work and there's a shooting, let's say, or something that's crazy. Firemen die, cops die, but not this many in one day. And you got to walk back into that place where you work the next day and go to work.
Yeah.
Cops and firemen and.
You think of the scope of it. It was an attack on our country. It wasn't we were literally in a city that was under attack.
It was the night tours. I remember the night tours were just hell. Just walking in there and you remembered all the guys laughing and this and that. And now you're walking in there and you know, trying to move forward. And that was the basis for starting Laughter Saves Lives. Because I remembered a few months after 9/11, we laughed about something, whatever it was. And then the first thing you do is you go, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. That's disrespectful.
Right.
And then the next thing you say is, wow, that felt good.
No.
That really felt good, though. And when I did that, I said, man, what a great way to remember them. There's going to be so many memorials and so many funerals. But if it was me, which it easily could have been, I want my family laughing at one point. I want my friends laughing at one point. And a lot of people have come up to us after shows and have said that, hey, I haven't laughed this hard for whatever reason. And laughter does save lives. It really does. It really helps people. Did you read all your names?
No, I want to read the 23 NYPD
Go.
officers.
Go.
Sergeant Gerard Coughlin, Sergeant Rodney C. Gillis, Sergeant Michael S. Curtin, Detective Joseph V. Vigiano, Detective Claude Daniel Richards, P.O. Maura Ann Smith, P.O. Ramon Suarez, P.O. Paul Talty, P.O. Santos Valentin Jr., P.O. Walter E. Weaver, P.O. Ronald Philip Klopfer, P.O. Thomas M. Langone, P.O. James Patrick Leahy, P.O. Brian Grady McDonald, P.O. John William Perry, P.O. Glenn Karen Pettit, P.O. John Delaria, P.O. Vincent Dans, P.O. Jerome M.P. Dominguez, P.O. Stephen P. Driscoll, P.O. Mark Joseph Ellis, and P.O. Robert Fazio Jr.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
10%, what was it? 10% of the job, the FDNY, I think, was lost on 9/11, but 40% of those guys came from the 40% of the Special Operations Command was lost on that day. So all the rescue squad, hazmat, all the specially trained units lost 40% of their men on 9/11.
Yeah.
You know, that's a phenomenal number. Barbara, I'm sorry, we didn't leave you with that much time. Is there anything else you want to say about the calling of the names? Is there any changes this year, anything in the future that you're looking to do?
The first year we just called the names. Last year, what we decided to do
Which was nice.
was to call people by their title, their affiliation. So I welcome anybody to take a look at the website and to add that in if they see their loved one there, or if they're submitting their loved one's name, their friend's name. Put that
the
in.
website again.
Yeah, repeat your website.
And the website is www.callingofthenames.com. Time to two quick things.
We have about 2 minutes.
I want to say hi to Monica Eichen. I knew her. So in the first couple of years, I volunteered for the September 11th Families Association, and they
You
shared
know everybody,
offices.
by the way. You know everybody.
Well, you know,
She does.
actually,
You know
but
your
it was
joke?
Great to
You
hear
know
you,
your guy
Monica.
goes, she's the one I know. He says, he knows something for everyone, and it's usually a fireman. I know a lot of people, but I only need to know one. You.
The other thing is we got the way, I just left, once a year I go to the airport and pick up the Sumiyamas. They lost their son in the towers and they come every year. And they always bring me a little something. But that's how we got the name. So one year I sent them a note saying they're doing a lottery. Would you like to enter your family's name in the reading of the names? The way it got translated, because reading is passive. So when the translator translated the word, she didn't say, would you like to read the names? She said, would you like to call the names? So they answered back to me, say, we would be honored to call the names. And a very different feeling to it. So we got the title, actually, the inspiration for the title from an
That's a
island
great
family.
story.
Yes, yes.
All right, Barbara, we have to go. Because I know
Adios,
the
amigos.
two of us can talk for at least another hour, you and I.
But it's a 1 hour show.
I know.
And you know what? I'm hungry. So.
All right, we'll feed you. I would like to thank Benny Rizzuti for allowing us to do this tonight, because Benny didn't do a lot of talking and he allowed us to be up here and remember our guys.
Thank you.
We'll see you on the next Laughter Saves Lives and Benny Rizzuti regular show. Never forget, never forget, never forget. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.